Welcome to the third and final video in our short series on getting started with Redux Toolkit. We left off last time having gotten our app to the point where we were fetching a list of users on initial load. In this video, we'll parse the API response into data that we can display in a vertically scrolling list and implement pagination such that when we scroll to the bottom of the screen, we fetch a new set of users for us to display. Let's get started. Let's get started by adding a flat list to our component. First, we'll pass in our screen state's users as the data prop. Next, we'll fill out the render item prop, and we'll just render the same JSON that we were rendering before. And lastly, we need a key extractor prop, and we'll just return the index of the current list item that we're passing over. Cool, so now we can see that we're rendering the same JSON blob, but we know that it's a flat list because we have this vertical scrolling indicator and also this bouncing effect. I actually prefer to remove these in most production apps, but these are the settings that come by default with flat list. Now we can implement pagination. This is actually remarkably easy with flat list. We'll dispatch an action to our slice when we scroll to the bottom of the list, updating the state and firing off a request to the API. So first we'll define a function up here that'll dispatch our fetch users action. Ultimately we're going to pass in a page, but for now we'll leave that undefined because we want to get it from our slice's state. Okay, and we'll define the onEndReached prop here, and it'll just call our handle onEndReached function. So let's go over to our slice and define some additional state to hold the next page that we want to fetch from the API. We'll add it to our user list state type here, and it'll just be a number. And then we'll set its initial value. So we also want to make sure that when we successfully fetch users that we increment this piece of state in the fulfilled lifecycle event here. Awesome. So now in our component, we can pass in the screen state's next page property. Awesome. So now we have what looks and feels like working pagination. Although something feels a little bit off here, I'm going to open up the network inspector and see exactly what network requests are being executed. Okay. So one thing I'm noticing is that we're firing off requests even if one is already outstanding. So I think we should add a check so that we only dispatch our fetch users action if our slice is not in the loading state. So let's go ahead and add that. Nice, that looks much better. But one thing I'm noticing is that our list of users doesn't seem to be growing, so let's make sure that we're appending the results of the API request to our screen state. Okay, we're not. So let's do that now. Cool. Yeah, that's looking a lot better. So the last thing that we need to do before we add a little styling is to parse the response that we're getting from the API into a form that our UI wants to consume. All we want for our purposes is a first name and a photo URL. So let's look at the structure of the response that we're getting from the API. So it looks like the information that we want is nested inside a few objects here. I think the easiest way to tackle this would be for us to have our model mirror the structure of the JSON. So let's alter our user model a little. We'll pull out the first name and also the thumbnail URL individually. And now we can use them in our flat lists render item prop. Awesome, so now we can see that each list item shows us the user's first name and also the URL of their profile image. So now we have everything that we need to start doing some basic styling, so let's create a separate component that we'll use to render each individual list item. This component will take a user prop, and it'll be our user model. And we can actually just grab the code that we've already written and put it down below here. Clean this up a little. Let's make sure to import our user model. Cool, and then we can just pass in our new component to our flat lists render item prop. Let's define some styles below. First, let's put some padding around the name text. Let's make sure that we've imported style sheet from React Native. Let's apply that style to the name text here. Awesome, that's looking a little better. Let's encapsulate this whole thing in a view so we can add some spacing around each individual list item. We'll create a container style and we'll give it a flex direction of row and we'll add some padding around it. Okay, one thing I'm noticing, yeah, let's center everything here. Cool. So now the user's name is centered along with the thumbnail URL. And so let's also apply some styles to our thumbnail URL text here. We'll create an empty thumbnail style. And actually, well, what we want to do is render an actual image here. So let's import image from React Native and we'll use the thumbnail URL as our source URI. And so we'll need to give these images a size in order for them to appear. So let's apply the style that we created. And let's specify a width and a height. It can be any arbitrary number. Awesome. So we have some images rendering here for each of the users. Let's make them circular and give them a nice border here. So we'll specify a border radius, half the width / height, and a border color of purple, and a border width of something small, like 3. Cool. Great, so now we have our list of users rendering. We have these nice circular thumbnail images. It's looking pretty good. So that wraps up our short video series on getting started with React Native using Redux Toolkit and TypeScript. I hope that you found it useful and also that you're enjoying using these tools in your own apps. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in another video soon.